In Dubai, a hotel employee opens the door to room 230. The man is lying calmly on his bed. There is a medicine bottle on the nightstand. The door is chained from the inside. At first glance, the police think this is a natural death, but the security cameras show something entirely different. Hours of footage reveal 27 agents disguised as tennis players, tourists, and businessmen tracking a single man step by step through luxury hotels. They enter the closed and locked room without breaking anything. They end his life without leaving a trace. Then they vanish into thin air with passports and identities stolen from ordinary people, as if they never existed. It was 2010. And the world was unknowingly witnessing one of the most meticulously documented assassinations in history. An operation so brazen, filmed by cameras from the very beginning, yet closed due to lack of evidence. It was like a scene from a movie. It would later be called Operation Plasma Screen. The moment Mossad turned a five-star hotel into an execution chamber, despite the cameras. The Emirates flight landing at Dubai International Airport showed 2:30 p.m. Mahmud al-Mabu grabbed his bag and walked calmly, passing through customs with the ease of years of experience. His passport listed his occupation as merchant. The officer gave it a brief glance and stamped it without asking any questions. Outside, the afternoon sun scorched the asphalt, spreading heavy heat through the air. Mahmud got into a taxi and told the driver the address. Al-Bustan, Rotana Hotel. There was something he didn't notice. He was already being watched. A woman with sunglasses standing by gate 17 turned her head slightly as he passed, silently sizing him up. By the baggage carousel, a man pretending to busy himself with a newspaper glanced at his watch inconspicuously and memorized the time. On the parking level, another agent sent a brief message from an encrypted phone. Plasma screen has arrived. Everything was proceeding as planned. Mahmud al-Mabu wasn't even his real name. It was just an alias he had used for years. He had opened his eyes to life in 1960 at the Jabalia refugee camp in Gaza. In his youth, he was an ordinary young man lifting weights in makeshift gyms, but over time, he became one of Hamas's most important figures. His area of expertise wasn't battlefields, but the plans behind the war. He neither made bombs nor launched rockets. Instead, he managed the complex networks that ensured weapons from Iran passed through Sudan, Egypt, and the tunnel labyrinths beneath Rafah to reach Gaza. When fighters needed them, missiles were ready. When armor advanced, anti-tank weapons were in hand. If operations could find funding, it was often because of him. He was a man Mossad had been tracking step by step for 20 years. The file, kept at the Tel Aviv headquarters, was thick. Secretly taken photographs, intercepted conversations, seized messages, and financial records tracking millions of dollars passing through his accounts. In other words, nearly every moment of his life had been archived down to the finest detail. His name had been on Mossad's list since 1989, since that year when he personally participated in the kidnapping and killing of 2 Israeli soldiers. One of the victims was Avi Sasportas, only 21 years old, captured at a hitchhiking point, shot 3 times, and buried in a pre-dug hole. The other was Ilan Sa'adan, forced into a car by men disguised as Orthodox Jews and killed with a Beretta. Mahmud was brazen enough to have his photo taken with the men before they were killed. These actions, his key role in arming Hamas, and the line he established between Tehran and Gaza, resulted in his being placed on a red page in Mossad's files, indefinite execution authorization. There was no expiration date. It would either be cancelled or executed someday. And that January afternoon, as he settled into room 230 at the Al-Bustan Rotana Hotel, the time had come to carry out that decision. In 2010, security in Dubai had become an obsession. The system, established under the leadership of Dahi Khalfan Tamim, had turned into one of the world's densest closed-circuit camera networks. Streets, shopping malls, hotels, airports, nearly every corner was monitored. The aim was to deter crime and catch perpetrators. This time, the cameras would document a far more complex operation. The agents were aware of everything. They had studied the infrastructure for months. Yet, they didn't stop. This wasn't recklessness, but a cold calculation. Mahmud had rarely made a mistake, and that mistake was coming on this trip without his security detail. His team would be with him tomorrow. The narrow time window they had was their only chance. For the planners, speed was more valuable than invisibility. They needed to act quickly, finish the job, and disappear before Dubai police understood what had happened. The first agents entered the city on January 18th, one day before Mahmud. At exactly 6:45 a.m., airport cameras recorded two men traveling under the names Michael Bodenheimer and James Leonard Clark. They carried European passports and passed through immigration without issue. Around noon, two more people arrived from Paris. According to their documents, Irish citizens Gail Folliard and Kevin Daveron. They checked into separate hotels, reviewed what they needed to do once more, and began waiting for orders. Peter Elvinger arrived on the 19th at 2:29 a.m., just a few hours before Mahmud's flight. Authorities would later find his luggage suspicious, but wouldn't explain why. It was believed that Elvinger was both the field commander and a significant figure in the operation. He was caught on cameras leaving the terminal, first speaking briefly with an agent, then taking a taxi to his hotel. Everything was exceedingly ordinary. All of them had been trained with military discipline, and their movements were exactly as they should be. When Mahmud landed that afternoon, 11 agents had already spread throughout Dubai. Some were waiting in rented cars, while others sat quietly and calmly in hotel lobbies. Some wandered aimlessly through shopping centers, while others blended in with tourists. They communicated through encrypted lines routed through Vienna, Austria, a deliberate deception to hide the real command center. Mahmud arrived at the Al-Bustan Rotana Hotel at 3:20 p.m. He walked through the lobby with calm, confident steps. He had the ease of someone moving through enemy territory. He requested a room without a balcony, with sealed windows and a single entrance. For someone who took threats seriously, this was a routine request. The staff handed him the key to room 230 without asking any questions. Before going upstairs, he left his money and documents in the safe, then headed for the elevator. Two men in tennis attire carrying racket bags were with him. They stood close enough to note his floor, his room number, the location of his door. Mahmud didn't even look back. Such types were always present in luxury hotels, and there was no reason for him to be suspicious. These two watchers in blue and white shirts spent the next hour wandering the second-floor corridor. One stood by the elevator, making calls on a secure communication device, while the other walked back and forth in the hallway, monitoring everyone entering and leaving rooms. They were mapping the floor step by step, checking the guard schedule, and marking room 237, directly across from Mahmud's. At 3:47 p.m., a woman named Gail checked into the Fairmont Hotel Dubai, located several kilometers away. According to investigators, the final briefing was given here. The assassination team gathered in a meeting room, reviewed the plan one last time, synchronized their watches, and clarified emergency scenarios. At 4:14 p.m., Kevin Daveron left the hotel and headed toward Rotana. 2 minutes later, Gail followed. The plan was now in motion. Field Commander Peter Elvinger made the final move by reserving room 237 from a nearby hotel's business center. From there, he made 2 phone calls. The first was to arrange the room. The second, to purchase a ticket for a Zurich flight via Doha. Then he left the business lounge and arrived at the Al-Bustan Rotana Hotel at 4:23 p.m. He officially checked in. received the electronic key, and handed it to Kevin in the lobby. He left his suitcase beside him and exited the hotel. By 4:40 p.m., he was already on his way to the airport. He would board the 7:30 p.m. flight and leave the city before the operation was complete. Kevin and Gail entered room 237 at 4:44 p.m. and 5:06 p.m., respectively. Over the next hour, 2 more agents joined them. One of them wore a wig for disguise. Cameras captured Gail at 6:21 p.m., heading to the parking garage with several bags. The team was waiting there. She returned shortly after. The room had now become the operations headquarters. Kevin, Gail, and 4 executioners. At 6:32 p.m., a 4-person team entered the hotel. 2 wore baseball caps, 1 white and 1 dark. The others wore casual clothes, 1 green and 1 blue. They carried both a black backpack and a black and white sports bag. Cameras recorded them going up to the 2nd floor and entering room 237. Inside, they began waiting for the right moment to act. Mahmud had briefly left the hotel at 4:23 p.m. for reasons not entirely clear. According to some claims, he had met with a banker and a Revolutionary Guards contact nearby. According to others, he was simply shopping. What's certain? At 8:24 p.m., he returned, passed by Gail, who was talking on the phone and smiling in the hallway, and entered his room. His key worked without issue. There were no signs of forced entry on the door. There was nothing to make him suspicious. At exactly 8 p.m., the assassination team moved to access his room. The hotel's electronic lock system recorded a failed reprogramming attempt, with a key not registered in the system. They weren't forcing the door. They were trying to silently take control of the lock and change the code to enter without invalidating Mahmud's key. They were using an extremely professional method, likely rehearsed repeatedly. Just then a guest got off the elevator. Kevin immediately intercepted the man and started a conversation. During this brief distraction, the team either retreated or slipped inside unnoticed. The cameras were at angles that didn't directly view the door, so exactly how they entered was never clarified. What happened inside room 230 is unknown. There were no witnesses, nor any audio recordings of what occurred. However, the forensic evidence left behind revealed just how cold-blooded the job was. Mahmud was first incapacitated with succinylmethonium chloride, injected into his right hip, a fast-acting muscle relaxant. This drug essentially paralyzes a person in just a minute, completely restricting movement and speech while consciousness remains intact. In high doses, it stops breathing and causes suffocation. In addition, a stun gun was used. Burn marks were found on his chest and behind his ear. The reason they did this was to make it look like a heart attack. In other words, they wanted it to appear as a natural death. They delivered the final blow through suffocation. A blood-stained pillow was found. His nose had bled while he resisted. The broken slats under the bed and damage to the headboard indicated a fierce struggle. Mahmud al-Mabu, nicknamed the Fox for his ability to sense danger, was fighting for his life inside, while Kevin and Gail stood guard outside. It all happened in just 20 minutes. At 8:46 p.m., the first 2 members of the team left the Al-Bustan Rotana Hotel with a large sports bag believed to contain the murder weapons. Behind them, only a forgotten latex glove remained. 4 people got on the elevator together, but left the hotel one by one to avoid drawing attention. At 8:47 p.m., Gail slipped out pretending to still be on the phone. Kevin followed at 8:51 p.m. The watchers who had been sitting in the lobby all evening and were actually on guard dispersed at 8:52 p.m. In short order, they all disappeared into Dubai's dark streets. They got into taxis in pairs and went to the airport. Within 12 hours, they would be scattered across Europe, Africa, and Asia with fake passports and stolen identities. Mahmud lay dead in his locked room. The door was chained from the inside. A medicine bottle was left on the nightstand with an arrangement suggesting a high dose had been taken. Everything was planned to appear as a natural death. The truth would fully emerge 10 days later. That night, his wife called repeatedly. The phone rang, but no one answered. When there was no word from the Hamas center in Damascus either, concern grew. On January 20th, around 1:30 p.m., a floor attendant went to check the room because he hadn't checked out and found the body. He was lying calmly on the bed. There were no visible wounds. Only the broken slats under the bed betrayed a silent struggle. The initial examination suggested a natural death, hypertension, overdose, or heart attack. But as the autopsy-performing doctor's findings accumulated, the picture changed. Injection marks, electrical burns, succinylmethonium chloride residues in the tissues, blood on the pillow, bruises on the face and neck. When all the findings came together, it became clear this was a planned assassination. The official cause of death was finally recorded as brain hemorrhage, triggered by a powerful electrical shock. Initially, no one knew the victim's identity. Not even the police knew who he was. Mahmud had traveled under an alias. The identity confusion complicated the investigation. When the true information became clear, Dahi Khalfan Tamim was furious. This wasn't just an ordinary murder. It was an open challenge to his country's sovereignty. Moreover, the incident had occurred at the Al-Bustan Rotana Hotel, minutes from his office. Tamim ordered his team to collect camera footage from the airport, streets and avenues, hotels and shopping centers. What emerged was astonishing. 648 hours of footage and 27 suspects moving like ghosts. The recordings showed agents changing disguises in bathrooms, talking on encrypted phones, tracking Mahmud step by step in lobbies and hallways, and synchronizing every movement with military discipline. According to the footage, agents had changed their clothes in bathrooms, communicated through encrypted phones, and the recordings showed they were on Mahmud's tail, tracking him step by step in the hotel's corridors and lobbies. And all their movements were synchronized with military discipline. Everything had happened in front of the cameras, but no one had noticed at the time. On February 15th, Dubai police held a press conference and released a produced video asking the public for help identifying suspects. The footage was quickly watched around the world. News channels repeatedly showed the men in tennis attire, the woman with sunglasses, the figures in baseball caps. All the frames were examined in detail by intelligence analysts. They were amazed both by the audacity of the operation and by the fact that it had been so openly caught on camera. The scandal quickly focused on the passports. 11 suspects had used expertly prepared fake documents, generated from identities belonging to real people living in Israel. 6 British, 3 Irish, 1 French, and 1 German passport. The owners were ordinary people, dual citizens, grandchildren of Holocaust survivors. They had no idea they were involved or that their identities had been copied. One of the British passports belonged to a soldier who died in the 1973 Yom Kippur War, another to a man who hadn't left Israel in 30 years. The Irish Ministry of Foreign Affairs announced that these passports had never been officially issued. The numbers were genuine, but the signatures and photos were all fake. France found 4 fake documents, including the one Peter Elvinger used. Germany traced Michael Bodenheimer's passport to a Holocaust survivor family whose identity had been exploited through a citizenship claim. The diplomatic response was swift. The United Kingdom deported a senior Israeli diplomat, believed to be Mossad's local coordinator. Condemnations came one after another from Europe, but everyone knew this was a symbolic move. There was no direct evidence, no one had been caught, and the victim was a senior figure in Hamas, which many Western countries considered a terrorist organization. Dahi Khalfan Tamim stood before cameras and said he was 99, even 100% certain that the operation was carried out by Mossad. He called for arrest warrants for Benjamin Netanyahu and Mayor Dagon. His words made headlines but had no legal consequence. Israel, as always, neither confirmed nor denied. Foreign Minister Avigdor Lieberman called the allegations speculation, even suggesting that the press might have watched too many James Bond films. According to allegations, the agents were from Mossad's elite Caesarea unit, a structure operating in the shadows, living between legends and classified files. Most were former commandos recruited from Israeli special forces, trained in close combat and deep infiltration. They lived under assumed identities in cities across Europe and the Middle East, their neighbors unaware of who they were. Failure was unacceptable. Success was measured in silence. A former Caesarea commander, Mike Harari, had summed it up in one sentence: "We never apologize for what we do. We do whatever is necessary for the safety of our people." This had been the unofficial motto of Israeli intelligence for years. Such operations required approval at the highest level. This was called a red page, an execution authorization, signed jointly by the Prime Minister and Defense Minister, not tied to a specific date. This system didn't work like an order, until it was cancelled or the execution was carried out. The order remained in effect, and the file stayed open. Mahmud al-Mabu's name had been on this list since 1989. Training in Mossad's Caesarea unit was conducted in facilities isolated from the outside world. Agents' names were shared with no one except their spouses. Most of the time, they had no contact even with other sections of their own organization. They specifically stayed away from the main headquarters in Tel Aviv, and when missions came, they operated in small teams relying on local connections. Voluntary supporters, Sayanim, scattered among Jewish communities around the world, provided logistics, often remaining unaware of the operation's entirety. The Dubai operation was prepared not for months, but for years. According to information that emerged later, Caesarea members had come to the city 5 times in the 9 months before the assassination. They had studied Dubai's security systems, tested entry and exit points, identified all blind spots in the cameras. Most importantly, they wanted to be certain that the man they were after was actually Mahmud, because a past mistake still lingered in memory. In 1973, in the Norwegian town of Lillehammer, an innocent waiter was killed due to mistaken identity. Agents were caught, and Israel paid a heavy diplomatic price. After that incident, identity verification had become an obsession. The Dubai operation technically achieved its objective. Mahmud was killed. Hamas lost an important logistical mine. Arms lines were disrupted, and the supply chain stretching from Iran to Gaza took a hit. But the operation's exposure produced unexpected results. The fake European passports used in the operation angered Western allies. The United Kingdom and France's reaction was harsh. France, in particular, worried that this could upset sensitive balances within the country. Diplomatic relations became strained. The head of Caesarea even submitted his resignation. But because Mayor Dagan personally took responsibility, the resignation was not accepted. Nevertheless, the picture was read differently within Israel. No official acknowledgement came, but the message was clear. If Israeli intelligence considered someone a threat, it could reach them anywhere in the world and eliminate them. This deterrence was noted by everyone, including Hezbollah and Iran. The perception that no place is completely safe was especially deliberate. Interpol added photos of 11 suspects to its wanted list. Dubai police obtained retinal scans from some agents' DNA and fingerprints from others. The data was uploaded to international systems, yet no one was caught. The agents disappeared as they had come, likely already scattered to other countries with different identities for different missions. They lived in the shadows and vanished into the shadows again. In December 2010, a new and strange link was added to the story. Ben Ziggier, an Australian-Israeli dual citizen and allegedly Mossad-connected agent, was found dead in his cell at Ayalon prison. His file was so classified that guards only called him Prisoner X. His real name had never been spoken. Being found dead in a cell supposedly designed to prevent suicide 3 days after meeting with renowned defense attorney Avigdor Feldman increased suspicions. The official statement pointed to suicide, but the question of how such a tightly guarded prisoner could do this was never fully answered. According to unverified allegations, Ziggier had participated in the Dubai operation and then betrayed the organization by leaking information to Dubai police. Some said he gave names, others that he requested protection. The stories didn't match. Truth and rumor became intertwined, and the file disappeared into the mist. What made Operation Plasma Screen extraordinary wasn't just the assassination. It was that everything had been recorded by cameras. For the first time, the world saw so nakedly how a modern intelligence service carried out a targeted execution, step by step. The 648 hours of footage were practically instructional. Intelligence services around the world pored over the recordings. The successes were clear. Rapid deployment, flawless coordination, disguises, fake documents, a clean execution without harming civilians, and exit from the city before authorities realized the situation. But the mistakes were also evident. Excessive confidence against cameras, underestimating biometric traces at airports, relying on traceable identities, and underestimating Dubai's security capacity. Despite all the evidence, no one was prosecuted. The real names of the suspects were never officially disclosed. Interpol issued red notices, but nothing came of it. Israel neither confirmed nor denied. Dubai's arrest warrants remained on paper. Those who entered room 230 disappeared into the shadows as they had come. Mahmud's absence created no void either. New ones came to replace him. The networks continued to operate, even if interrupted. Iran found other intermediaries. Hamas adapted its lines. The chain of violence wasn't broken. Each strike spawned the next. In the end, Operation Plasma Screen was both a lesson in power and limits. It showed that a state could find its target anywhere in the world, but it also revealed this truth. In the camera age, there is no such thing as invisibility. Ghosts can still kill, but they cannot disappear without leaving a trace. The hotel cameras fell silent. The assassins vanished across 3 continents. Mahmud's body was sent to Damascus and buried at Yarmouk. The file was closed. Answers never clearly emerged. Somewhere, planners were probably calculating new mistakes, preparing the next red page. The world may want to believe that law prevails, but the system operating behind the curtain is very different. A parallel order where decisions are given with signatures and violence is applied silently. The cameras caught the method, not the faces, names, and rooms where orders were given. If this story made you think, ask yourself, do such operations truly provide security, or do they feed an endless cycle of reckoning?